If you complete this episode and find yourself saying, "Those other people, they're so stupid. I'm not like that at all," then I have failed you. This episode should make you feel uncomfortable. That's how you grow. No pain, no gain. If you're listening to this, you're likely smart. You're likely already making a positive splash in this industry, or you have some serious potential when you do finally enter the space. But one thing I am sure of is that you, just like me, have fallen victim to some of the things I'm going to discuss on this episode. But you're in good company. So have a lot of other super successful people. The difference is, those super successful people have learned how to overcome their own psychology. And so can you.
Warning. This podcast features the truth about owning and operating mobile home parks. The following program is not designed to be sexy. It will not hype you up on MHPs. Rather, this is a raw take on this industry and how you find your own path to success. Welcome to MHP IRL, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, with your host, Ryan Norris.
The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Quote by Richard Feynman. We need to start by trying to answer this question. What happened? What happened to all of those 10 caps, seller carry, all tenant owned home, city utilities, mom and pop deals? Or how about even anything reasonably priced for that matter? Clearly, there are too many factors that I won't have time to cover, so I will focus in on some that you can learn from, avoid, and use to help improve your business. Chapter 1. Industry Hype. Beyond hype being at fault for over-optimism, hype can also attach itself to larger dreams. A big reason why, in my opinion, Tim Ferriss sold so many copies of his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, is because who doesn't want to quit their job, start their own business, live rich, and achieve time freedom? I speak with a ton of people in this industry and trying to break into it. The overwhelming majority that are trying to break in want to because they want to quit their jobs that they feel stuck in. They seek time freedom. But the 4-Hour Workweek crowd, although they represent, in my opinion, the majority, isn't the biggest reason that this market is so frothy. In my opinion, the other big crowd that's affecting more price change than others are the large-scale syndicators, aka people with big-time money. These are people who go out, raise money, and look to scale up a portfolio. Obviously, there are small, medium, and large syndicators, and the larger ones affect the top level change the most. Here's how. Chapter 2. Macro Strategies for Micro Properties. The bigger syndicators have an upwards of $200 million to place, if not way more than that. When you have that much money, you have options and pressures other companies and individuals just don't have. Lower cost of capital can get you into deals. You can outbid others while still making your returns. But it's more than that. I've spoken with several larger operators who say things like, Yeah, I'll buy a 4-star property sub 4 cap because I have a 2-star property that's hemorrhaging money. But Fannie won't refi me. So I'll overpay and possibly even lose money on a nicer, stable property and cram the lower, highly profitable property into that Fannie loan so I can refi it more attractively. From a macro standpoint, that's a clever play. So long as you are achieving the returns that you need, that's a micro play that a small to medium-sized player can't or won't do. But here's the problem with overpaying for properties that serve macro strategies. The word gets out. The sale price is then used as a comp for other local properties. Chapter 3. Trickle-down effects. But these larger operators are buying huge, nice, stable properties. Why would a broker or local owner ever use one of those properties as a comp? If you've cold called before or looked at some broker OMs, that last question should have made you chuckle a little bit. Brokers and owners have the same goal: selling properties for the highest price. I'd like to think that most brokers and owners on a 2-star asset will be rational enough not to use a 4-star property as a comp. But that's not the reality. But don't blame the local owners and brokers. They want every penny they can get. Where logic should put those folks in their places, unfortunately, there's more at play. Chapter 4. Money must be placed. There's a reason why Ian and I don't have a fund as of this recording in 2019. We don't want to feel that pressure to have to allocate capital. I've spoken to fund managers so desperate sounding that they were nearly begging for deals. Can you imagine convincing several people to write big checks on the premise that you were going to hit big returns, and then you didn't even place the capital? That pressure creates an environment ripe for psychological self-trickery. Here are some real justifications I've heard. It's a high upfront price, but these will appreciate. Industry consolidation will save me. It's about my IRR, not my year 3 P&L. It's tertiary, but the sub-market is really strong and the demographics misleading. We wanted all tenant-owned home, but we now know that's unrealistic. This is only a light turnaround, so we can handle it. It's not our original thesis, but this opportunity makes us competitive. We're paying up to get a foothold in this market. I'm comfortable only making a 4% return levered. I know my assumptions are a bit aggressive, but we believe we can achieve this. It doesn't look good, but we're smart enough to figure this out. To be fair, I'm giving those phrases zero context, and the individuals responsible for saying them have no chance to defend themselves. But that's the point. Stripping out the context to separate logic from emotion is the only way to evaluate these decisions. Smart people make dumb decisions all the time. How? They add logic to emotion without even realizing that's what they've done. Getting back to the brokers and local owners using inappropriate comps, if you're desperate to place capital, you may not initially agree with a valuation, but some will talk themselves into it. And a market is just what someone is willing to pay for a property. The inappropriate comps become appropriate comps because people are buying them at those prices. Clearly, pressure to place capital influences bad decision-making. But shocker, there's even more at play. Chapter 5. Social comparison. I did an entire mid-month wisdom on social comparison because I saw so many people signaling, or being showy, about how much they owned or how busy they were closing deals. I personally made the mistake of believing others were just making millions of dollars. Meanwhile, I couldn't find a deal to save my life. Truth is, as I started to unravel a lot of these signalers, I found they were omitting some key details of what was actually going on behind the scenes. The point is, you can't let what you think others are doing affect your business negatively. Give that episode another listen. So, what things happen to you as a result of social comparison? Here are several examples of psychological self-trickery that could affect your valuations. FOMO, or fear of missing out. Competition, or rivalries, which can make you want to win more than make smart choices. Winner's curse, which is a phenomenon that occurs commonly at auctions, where the winner will continue to bid beyond their highest and best due to fear of losing the deal or even just getting caught up in the heat of the moment. The falsehood of bigger is better. History is littered with examples of why the philosophy of growth equals progress wound up meaning kings, dictators, and people of power losing after biting off way more than they could chew. Business is not exempt from this psychological trap. Scarcity mindset. An uber charismatic friend of mine once said, "Being attractive isn't about having more. It's about needing less." Feeling like you don't have enough and that there aren't enough deals to go around will lead you to some bad decisions. I've been in touch with people who have bought properties 15 years ago for prices that aren't even market today. Why? Because they thought those deals were drying up. Do something syndrome. Warren Buffett once said, in so many words, that most people would be uncomfortable with the amount of money he had just sitting on the sidelines, essentially doing nothing. Some people are just deal guys. Acquiring deals is really fun. It feels productive. But just because something feels productive doesn't mean it actually is. Chapter 6. Over-optimistic underwriting. Obviously, the culmination of all of these psychological traps is overly optimistic underwriting. Pressure to place capital, FOMO, competition, bigger is better, growth for growth's sake, scarcity mindset, do something syndrome, winner's curse, and so on and so on. These all lead to justifying low cap rates, like triple net lease low cap rates, assuming infill can be done in a very aggressive time frame. Shocker, it's both expensive and time-consuming, and the used market frequently dries up. Aggressive home sale strategies without sales professionals, or strong market demographics suggesting the market actually has an appetite for more housing. Making the first 2 to 3 years of your pro forma a complete bloodbath. Again, with the assumption you'll eventually be profitable. Blind trust in outsourcing operations. Blind trust in market factors outside of your control, like factories in small towns staying afloat, or that people in renter-heavy markets will be open to home ownership. Underestimating potential variance of park-owned home maintenance and deferred maintenance and additional workload associated with park-owned homes. Unrealistically low expense ratios, like 15% and below. And I'm sure I'm missing a ton of other perfectly rational, well-thought-out, dumb decisions. But again, it's not about being condescending towards others. Lots of bad decisions in history have resulted in strong profits or valuable lessons learned. At that point, they weren't dumb decisions at all. The question you should be asking is not, how could anyone come to that conclusion? Rather, the really smart people will ask, how do I avoid tricking myself? I am a part of the problem. I've bought properties for slim margins and for asset management fees. I've convinced myself to pay up for scale. I have helped owners justify their high prices. I'm one of the guilty ones of outsmarting myself. I'll admit this publicly because step one of combating this is having the courage to admit that, yes, we are susceptible to these traps and we are going to fall into them. Hopefully, me admitting this and this episode will inspire you, too, to have that same courage. Your pro formas depend on your self-esteem taking that beating like a champ. Smart people outsmarting themselves is the opposite of analysis paralysis. So please don't use this episode as an excuse to not take action. You should be taking action. Just take smarter action. But if a dumb decision can wind up profitable, then it's clear it's not about smart versus dumb. It's about risk versus reward. Dumb is just how we define a failed gamble in retrospect. So use this episode to challenge yourself to be more calculated and less emotional. Learn how to take on a proportionate amount of risk relative to the reward. And find that balance between taking too much action and not taking enough. You will find yourself saying some of the things I mentioned on this episode. That's okay. Just label those emotions as they occur and fight through them. And when you can't, make sure you have a support system that'll keep you in check. I credit my business partner Ian for helping me see myself falling into these traps all the time. You've got to find what works for you to keep your mind in check. So, now when you see insane pricing on properties and ask, how would anyone justify paying that? You'll have some insight as to why. And if you have a strong strategy, you'll resist the temptation to cut corners and just stick to your guns. Patience and persistence will reward you. Would having my due diligence list help you? If so, I will let you have it for free. That's right. My list that took me 3 years to develop and includes plenty of fixes for mistakes that I made that now you can avoid. All absolutely free. All I ask for in exchange is leave me a 5-star review and a comment. Screenshot your comment after it goes live and email it to me at my website, archimedesgrp.com. Afterwards, let's connect. This episode was inspired by a listener just like you. Even if you don't have any ideas for future episodes, let's still connect, as I'm sure there are ways you and I can help each other out. I'm looking forward to chatting soon.